Hello everyone. This video is going to be on film criticism and the interpretation of art in general in our culture that has a lot of opinions. And so here is another opinion about the opinion of people who make these opinions about the work that they may or may not understand entirely. And this is the root of criticism, right? Is that criticism is something that comes from a place of interpretation. So I just saw the movie Weapons. I thought it was brilliant. I think that the story being told was creative in its episodic structure as well as the themes that were being tackled, which were the use of the youth as a scapegoat, or the ability for tragedy to disconnect a community, and the incompetence of law enforcement. I read a review online of a person who had a much different interpretation of the film. They thought it was awful, they thought it was offensive, and it painted trans people in horrible light, and gay people were victims in it, and whatever. This is a spoiler free critique of that review. But it led me to think about the fact that interpretation is completely open to audience members. That is the magic of art, is that it is completely dependent on the background of the person who is viewing it and their own spin that they want to put on whatever's going on. So listen, if you're gonna say like, oh, she was dressed in a wig and she was like stealing the health of the youth, and like, whatever, spoiler alert, um she was locking kids up in her basement and like abducting them, and she was so transcoded, and that's a metaphor for the trans panic, and it's just like the horror film Longlegs, which also had an androgynous character in it. It says way more about the interpreter of these elements to say, oh my God, like they're being ageist because it's an old lady who's the villain, or the reactionary takes of criticism these days are out of control. And that's what happens when you TikTokify something like film criticism in the form of Letterboxd, because whatever, Letterboxd is a social media platform. It ain't no IMDb. I'm just going to say that. There's no nuance involved in a lot of Letterboxd reviews, because it is a social media platform based on making quips and, like, scandalous observations and trying to provoke people in whatever manner you can. And I was reading the comments on this film review where this person was making connections where there were none, and saying things like the gratuitous violence communicated disrespect to the gay community, and it was played up for laughs. And it's like, first of all, the particular death that they were talking about was not played up for laughs. It was the entire theater was silent. It was the most gruesome depiction of that particular death I could have seen, and no one was laughing. They were made to be very sympathetic characters as well, so I don't understand why this particular person was on a tirade. And you want to know the truth behind why certain people go on tirades against pieces of art that they dislike or do not connect with? Because they haven't learned the magic of just moving forward if something does not appeal to you. Because we have facilitated this culture of, we need to dismantle things that we disagree with, and we need to come up with arguments and tell everybody else to not like that thing because I don't like that thing. And this has been happening a lot recently, I've noticed. And maybe that this has been happening since the beginning of people, back in the caveman days, of people sharing their art. Criticism is based on the interpretation of the party, and criticism is based on reactions from people. What was I just going to say? The reaction to something like Ethel Cain's most recent album. Ethel Cain's most recent album. She came out with a 10-track album, and 3 tracks were instrumentals. And on a specific Reddit, pop heads people were freaking the fuck out, and they were like, "Oh my god, like I don't connect with these like songs with no words in them, and they really slowed down the pace of this project, and they were unnecessary, and she really should have, added like two more wordy tracks that were able to share lyrics and singing." And it's like, okay, taste is one thing. Taste is one thing. An album maker, you are not. A creator of music, you are not. What makes you think that you have the right to tell a director what they should or should not have put in as a plot device based on the effectiveness of the art? Okay. Based on your personal preferences? Where is that urge to tell somebody else what to do with their art coming from? And I can tell you where it comes from. It comes from personal preferences, and it comes from taste levels. And you want to know something? Not everybody has the best taste in the world, okay? I don't like chicken, therefore chicken nuggets must suck. I do like chicken. I fucking love the Taco Bell chicken nuggets, by the way, which I can't eat because I'm in Norway right now. So if somebody wants to start a Taco Bell franchise in Norway, and bite the bullet and try it out, just like Domino's, I think you would have great success here because I would buy all of your chicken nuggets. Um, I also want to talk about something that happened in drama school to me, and this will be the last part of the video. A professor of mine said that Stanley in the play A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams was a hero of the story, which is not false. Okay, he is both the hero and the villain of the story. He said something along the lines of Stanley Stanley's rape of Blanche. Sorry, again, spoiler alert. This play came out last century, um, but yeah, his rape of Blanche was a metaphor for class warfare or communism or some interpretation that he had of it. Whatever. Everyone's allowed to have their interpretation. He was an educated man. He was our teacher. He's allowed to share what he thought about the plot of A Streetcar Named Desire. Our class, which consisted of young people, I was 5 years older than everybody else. It consisted of young people, and they interpreted that as saying, "Oh my God, he's calling this guy a hero, and he raped this girl," and it made a bunch of people uncomfortable. And they interpreted that as him saying that rapists are heroes, and obviously he didn't mean that. Okay, but the way that information is relayed and the way that perspective works, people are going to get offended based on misunderstandings, and that's fine. Okay, there is nothing wrong with being offended by something that is triggering or that hurts you or brings up trauma. That's absolutely fine. But what I'm saying is it tells a lot about our character, about how we will react after being offended by something that we may not understand. Because number one, we could completely have misinterpreted what the message of that person was saying. Number two, we could be completely unjustified in our rage, and our reaction to what somebody is trying to say. Because the entire class, or not the entire class, but like people flipped out on this guy and like tried to get him fired. And I obviously was like, okay, you're valid in your feelings of being offended, but also like this guy didn't mean that a rapist is a hero. Like he didn't mean that. Okay, he was making an observation and he didn't explain himself very well, and it got misconstrued. So yeah, I want to be more understanding in the media that I'm consuming, and also if I don't agree with somebody else, I'm going to question more about what it is from my perspective that makes agreeing with them difficult, and then decide whether or not it's worth engaging this person in discussion, or if that discussion is just not for me. Because you can't change everybody's opinion. The only way to really change things is to lead through example, I've learned in this world. And the best example that I think one could take in terms of reacting to media would be to have a level headed kind of, again, someone who has studied narrative, I've learned to respect most people's interpretations of stories and that's the fun in it. But to discredit a work's merit based on personal biases and contrived information based on agenda, like saying something is transphobic, because of an interpretation of a character that was based on superficial factors, you're allowed to call wrong. So anyway, that's media literacy 101.